We're working with the inspiration from Dr. Gabor Maté's book, The Myth of Normal. And this week, we're looking again at toxic financial systems. One of the things that's really important to know and remember is that systems are set up and maintained by whoever benefits from it, usually, and that we can have an impact on the system if we're working together, especially, but it's often very hard to change a system. And that when we're in a system, we have the experience of powerlessness often, and just the experience of I feel good about myself or bad about myself depending on where I am in the system. I love this slide from 2008, 2009, 2010 when the Occupy Wall Street were working on trying to hold the people accountable for the financial collapse. And it wasn't happening. It wasn't the people who were responsible for that actually never had any legal remedies. They never went to jail. And a lot of people lost a lot of money. A lot of people were homeless. And I think what I like about that so much is that no matter how far into the dysfunction of the system is, that we can still work with changing a system. That once we're awake to what it really is, then we can start to vote different people in, we can start to protest, we can start to do different things. And it does have an impact on the system, especially if we're doing it collectively. So the richest 1% gained 6.5 trillion in wealth in 2021, and the rest of us are suffering because of that to some extent. We're all affected by the system that we live in. And I wanted to return to this slide too for this because it really points out how money has become our safety and security. And we used to rely much more on community. And some of the old ways weren't all good. Sometimes in a family system, older people or people who are vulnerable or children had a lot of difficulty. There might have been abuse. And money can free us from that, especially if we're older and we have some money. So money is not the only thing that can give us security, but it seems like we're relying much more on that than what we used to. And so that's part of the fabric of this toxic financial system. If we look at healthcare and the whole social fabric of ways that we're cared for in community, that has changed and not for the better in a lot of ways. So to put that into a context of our personal experience is very much affected by our whole community, meaning the whole culture, the country we live in, the people that are around us. And so that's not a personal failing of ours. If we don't have a social system that's set up to support us, that's something that's happening on a larger scale that we're affected by. I wanted to pause here for a moment and just to do some looking into beliefs about money. This quote from Dolly Parton: "The worst thing about poverty is not the actual living of it, but the shame of it." The idea that poverty is not just food and housing, shelter, safe drinking water, but the opportunity to learn, like to go and have some education, to take part in things like this, in part depends on if we have the money for the technology to join on a Zoom call, but also to be respected by fellow citizens. And, we each have our own personal experience with money, with having money or not having money. Some people are very anxious about money. Some people are what we would call good with their money, meaning that they're careful with their money, they save their money, they have enough money. Sometimes people have gone into careers or have built businesses where they've had an abundance of money. And some of those people do a lot of really good things with that money, and some of them don't. If we look at Amazon, Jeff Bezos, I don't think most people would say he's a benefactor, his ex-wife has given away a lot of money to different social justice organizations, and Dolly Parton's another one who's given a lot of millions and millions of dollars of the money that she's made. So money itself isn't bad or good. A lot of it is what we associate with it and our experiences around it. So let's just spend a little bit of time now in inquiry about this. So what for you personally does having money or not having money say about you? So let's start maybe even with somebody else. So if you know somebody who has a lot of money, this quote, people respect the money, not the person, was certainly true with my mother, especially. She really respected people who had money. And her attitude towards me really changed when I got a job for a corporation that paid me more than all of the social justice organizations I had worked at previously. Now, all of a sudden, I had arrived and she had a lot more respect for me. Now, that wasn't a value judgment that I agreed with. I didn't feel like I was any better or not good enough because I had a certain amount of money. That certainly that was something that really mattered to her. So when you think about somebody else who either has money or doesn't have money, what were the beliefs about that in your home? What does your culture tell you about that? What's changed for you through your lifetime as well? Let's take some time. Notice your body, notice your breath, notice sensations in your body as well. How does having money or not having money influence what you believe about a person or how you might interpret their goodness, or does somebody having a lot of money automatically believe that there's something wrong with them, that they're greedy? Notice all of the different ways that might come up. And bring to mind specific people, perhaps. And some of them we might have mixed feelings about, like Bill Gates. The Gates Foundation has really done a lot of good. They've spent billions. I don't know the figure, actually, I shouldn't say that. They spent a lot of money, certainly many millions, on their work around the world, around poverty, around clean drinking water, around good sanitation. So here is a company, and they have what many might think is a level of profit that's not correct, and they've also done a lot of good with their money. So to bring in that complexity of it too, we might not feel like they deserve that amount of money. And yet, I know for me, I have more respect for them than I have for someone who doesn't do anything good with their money, who just collects it and doesn't really care about anybody else. And as you're doing that, notice beliefs come in images often. We have associated thoughts. And what do you remember hearing when you were a child? Was money something that was scarce in your household? It was for many people. Was it something that your parents fought about, that they worried about? How many of your beliefs about money are in line or not in line with one or both of your parents? My parents had very different beliefs about money. And as we're doing this, stay in touch with your body and your breath and sensations in your body in particular. When you're thinking back to these things, what is the impact of that in your body? And as we're looking back historically from childhood through to present day, what beliefs have you formed about yourself because of how much money you do or don't have? And has that changed through your life? Did you used to be more confident and now you're not? Or do you worry a lot about money as you get older? What is the environment around money? And how does that inform your belief about you, your worth as a person? It might say a lot about, well, I have to struggle more, but does that affect your core belief about your own goodness, your own worth? And notice if you're shaming yourself. It could be that you're shaming yourself for not having enough money or for not being generous enough with money. Notice if there's any shame here, and then we could look at that directly. If something's getting a little intense, you could always tap on your forehead. You could put the image or the words into a frame, put it on the wall on the other side of the room. Take your eyes around the empty space. And notice if anything that's come up in the last several minutes has been a surprise. Sometimes when we do inquiry, we'll notice a little bit more intensity. There's a different level of sensation that maybe we didn't realize we were still holding on to something. We could do a reverse inquiry, like the amount of money I have doesn't mean anything about me as a person. And then see if there's any resistance to that. My value is independent of the amount of money I have. So we notice that there's a lot of different elements at play when we're looking at money and our own worth. We also could be looking at worrying about money, anxiety about money. And that's based on, in part, how much money we have. And in part, it's based on we might be thinking catastrophically about, well, what happens if I run out of money? And that's really common for people who are older, especially. I don't know if I'm going to have enough money to make it through to the end of my lifetime and be able to provide for myself. So we're not at all saying that these worries or beliefs are not true or that they're silly or something. That's not at all. We're just looking to see what are beliefs about money and what is my comfort level? How much time do I spend worrying and what's the intensity of worry? Or do I kind of feel like, I have a social support system that's going to help me if I run out of money? Or some of that might be family and friends, some of that might be government help. If you live in a country where there's a good social net, like I'm in Canada, which has somewhere in the middle between like the Scandinavian countries, which have a wonderful social net, and the United States, which has very few social supports. If you don't have money, you don't get health care, for instance. So noticing what's happening in our mind, and then noticing if you feel okay about that. There's no shame in worrying about having enough money. It doesn't make us happy, but it could be based on real life too. Like, I really do need to be careful. I need to be thinking about this so that I can do the best that I can to provide what I need. Let's take the last minute or so of this inquiry just to notice what's here, and also to notice what attracted your attention most. If there's something that you feel like it would be good to look into some more. When we come up with shame, especially, it might be really good to have your eyes open, do some things that help you to see that and release that, tapping on your forehead or looking in the frame. Those kinds of things can help us to come back to this moment in time and to see and witness our beliefs about money. It's complicated. It's complicated for all of us. We're highly conditioned around money and highly conditioned to believe that people with more money are better people, or that people who do good with their money are better people. Maybe to finish off with, really bringing forward some times when you have been able to share something and be generous, whether that's with money or time or kindness, whatever that might be for you. Feel that in your body, that generosity, that open heartedness, caring for other people, being part of the social fabric of care.